I'm going to introduce Meryl next. And just Meryl shared something with me this morning, which I was just flabbergasted. So I just wanted to start by asking you, Meryl, where were you immediately before you came here this morning?
I just came off a 12-hour shift for two loved ones. We're doing hospice at home for my husband, and my mother is in my dining room with late-stage dementia. So I was alone with two people, total care. So forgive me if I'm not wide awake or that I missed dinner. But we do believe that my husband still knows our touch, and that's why we do the care and don't let other people. We have to believe that he knows our touch after so many years. I think I can probably do this right from here to keep it folksy. First of all, I think both Miriam and Michael deserve a round of applause. The bravery of stepping forward, they are the exception, even today. And I have to tell you, I come from a space of 20 years in this space. So I'm going to take you back 20 years and tell you what it's like. So we've come a long way, but we have much farther to go. So I find that their ability to express how they feel and show you the nuances between what they know, and thank you, Michael, for being so honest, and thank you for even knowing that your caregiver and your wife matters to your stability. Because within this disease, there is a great deal of denial. Majority of the cases are in denial. My husband, go back 20 years, chief of HEMOC at NIH, high performance, maintained his brain, long distance runner, spoke 4 languages, 200 published papers. He maintained his brain. It just didn't matter. Back in those days, not unlike Michael, misdiagnosed for about 4 or 5 years, depression, stress. He had been to London, mad cow's disease, everything but, because no one said the word. It was only at autopsy when doctors would be comfortable. So the search was on. Well, the search was on in a space where I was trying to save my husband's career, because if it was something else, you don't want to destroy a loved one's career. The stigma around this disease, I was a reporter. I had never heard the word Alzheimer's 20 years ago and was left up in the air with a diagnosis of no hope. And then I began to search, because that was my instinct. I have just written a book. It was the most painful thing that I have ever done. But I did it because the reality is that the caregiver's experience is almost diametrically opposed to those that you will hear speaking out in our space. For my husband and for all of us, and even with very high-profile people, it is usually a public episode that makes them come out and admit. So Glenn Campbell is coming out with a movie, I'll Be Me. Well, he was outed because he was getting bad reviews. That usually is what happens to people. There is a public experience or moment in time at work or somewhere where a smart person can't hide out anymore. And in that phase, the caregiver is silent, because no one takes the last hurrah away from a loved one. You want to keep a loved one as independent for as long as you can. That's my job. I am the protector of the dignity, but I am also the keeper of the secret. So when I wrote the book, it was not to, I'll make one other quick point, because the gestalt around a disease that's been around for a very long time, and organizations try to help people live in that space, we've become brainwashed, in some sense, to our circumstance. That's why you don't feel the advocacy that you feel with breast cancer. That's why we are either worn out or we are trying to manage in our space every day in terms of what we do. So my book was going to be honest, because I wanted to unlock the conversation. How can you help us if we're not honest about what's really going on?
I call myself a POA. I'm a prisoner of Alzheimer's. I'm an extension of his disease. I feel compelled to speak out for both victims, because they have no voice, and for caregivers who are worn out. This will be our epidemic. This is the dark side of longevity. I just saw it young. So it's like being witness to the future. I'm afraid for all of us. So my wish for Harvey is that I just don't wear out or give up, or there's an episode where I can't manage it somehow. To me, it's time for a generation to say, unacceptable. This is not the way we want to end our lives.
She has been very painful, and but again, my goal was to unlock a conversation. George mentioned this statistic. It came out of a recent Merrill Lynch retirement study with AgeWave. We have now already infected, and I use the word infected, the next generation with the fear about this disease. They have lived it in families. They have seen generations interrupted. So I'll just show you when we're trying to unlock a conversation, some of the emails that I've been getting, or the Amazon reviews. You don't know me, but I am well on my way to becoming you. Age 69, my husband forgets things. I've been concerned for a few years, but others did not or would not see. That is still the environment today. I just finished reading your book. This comes from Canada, by the way. The nice thing about online is we go global automatically. No one ever told me about you as I struggled to find help for my husband. No doctor would tell me what the trouble was. His 4 adult children thought I was the devil because of hallucinations, and the Alzheimer's Association in Ontario sent me a 25-page document describing the disease. No one ever told me how to cope. That's one of your jobs today. Teach us how to cope. The Acclaim Health, a government-run agency, runs courses, but it offers no respite support or ideas for coping. Coping, that word comes up. Learned doctors speak and they say, oh, go get a family member to help you. We are the largest unpaid care in this country, and the assumption is that the caregiver is well. We are the first responders in a dementia-friendly environment when things go south. And as Michael admits, sometimes things go south. The caregiver is the infrastructure, not unlike a company where we fill in the void. Spouses, that's what we do for each other. The woman went on to say, thank you. I felt guilty, but you made me feel normal. Because all along I was told I should honor my vows of sickness and in health, return home. If it had not been for a male nurse in the home at the time of the gun incident, he actually tried to murder his wife with a gun that was in the house, I would not be sending this to you. Thank you for making me feel normal again. We have not unlocked the honest conversation in the world about this disease because generationally, as caregivers, we were taught to be stoic. That's what our mothers, we have swallowed the pain because there were no options. And that's why I fight for disease-modifying therapies. I want both Michael, I want Miriam to stay ahead of the science, stay well long enough for that disease-modifying therapy that might give them some better options. But in this space around them, we are presumptuous about what's really going on. So the focus groups have to really tease out conversations that we, by the way, have never wanted to have. I thought it might be interesting, and I'm just give me one more second. I want to take you through what happens to the brain, and then you're going to have to figure out how to create programs and support systems around what's going on in that time. And again, understand, let's be honest, this is the brain. It's who we are. We're all very different. So the idiosyncratic nature of the way the brain unravels makes your job even harder. So let's take a look. By the way, this is our children's concern.
Alzheimer's is a slow, fatal disease of the brain affecting 1 in 10 people over the age of 65. No one is immune. The disease comes on gradually as 2 abnormal protein fragments, called plaques and tangles, accumulate in the brain and kill brain cells. They start here, in the hippocampus, the part of the brain where memories are first formed. Over many years' time, the plaques and tangles slowly destroy the hippocampus, and it becomes harder and harder to form new memories. Simple recollections from a few hours or days ago that the rest of us might take for granted are just not there. After that, more plaques and tangles spread into different regions of the brain, killing cells and compromising function wherever they go. This spreading around is what causes the different stages of Alzheimer's. From the hippocampus, the disease spreads here to the region of the brain where language is processed. When that happens, it gets tougher and tougher to find the right word. Next, the disease creeps toward the front of the brain, where logical thought takes place. Very gradually, a person begins to lose the ability to solve problems, grasp concepts, and make plans. Next,
we'll stop right there for a second, because that is the space where you're going to be having the challenges around a dementia-friendly society. How do we, in fact, give Michael as much freedom and support him as well as we can in that space? It is also the space of adult daycare facilities, who only want you, by the way, in the early morning hours from 9 to maybe 12 or 1, because that's your best time. After that, you know what? You may get confused. What you're finding out is the social system set up pick off the easy patients, the ones that are more docile. They don't want their demographic messed up. And quite frankly, my husband was a very difficult case. He had a behavior disorder. He was strong, young, and it complicated everything. But then I've also seen my mother and watched the treatment of someone who is more classic in this space. So this is the space we've just been through where things are getting fuzzy. How are you going to wean somebody out of the workplace? What do you say? How do you support the caregiver who is trying to work and take care of her parent, of a spouse, managing her children? This is where it gets messy and why we had that important conversation last week. Let's move on a little further for the next round where your challenges get even greater.
Next, the plaques and tangles invade the part of the brain where emotions are regulated. When this happens, the patient gradually loses control over moods and feelings. After that, the disease moves to where the brain makes sense of things it sees, hears, and smells. In this stage, Alzheimer's wreaks havoc on a person's senses and can spark hallucinations. Eventually, the plaques and tangles erase a person's oldest and most precious memories, which are stored here in the back of the brain.